So up next will be an executive panel discussion, and it's about how people analytics can help employers match worker skills to future needs. Now, I know what you're thinking. Most people who are HR people are not math majors. People analytics can sound a little daunting, but with the universe of workplace skills expanding all the time, employers have to think ahead about what they'll need as their businesses are changing and growing. So our panel of expert speakers will be answering questions like, what are the best ways to assess the skills of your current workers, predict the skills that will be needed soon, and build the methods to bring employees up to speed. Now, let's find out. Moderating this discussion will be Noelle Phillips. She's a senior reporter at the Denver Post. She's covered everything from local government in rural Kentucky to combat in the Middle East. At the Post, Noelle now writes about air quality, wildfires, and other topics that affect the quality of life in Colorado and beyond. She's a proud journalism school graduate of Western Kentucky University. I don't know what their mascot is, or I'd say go, Wildcats or something, but please welcome Noelle and this panel of leaders to the stage.
Good morning, I'm Noelle, and I will answer the question about Western Kentucky's mascot. It is Big Red, and if you haven't seen him, he's a big red blob, and everybody always asks me, well, what is it? And I'm like, it's Big Red. What more do you need to know? Look it up, it's fantastic. So this morning we'll start out with introductions from our panelists who are going to wow you with their knowledge here. Let's start out with Peter.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be here, everybody. Peter Boyle. I'm Vice President of HR with Dell Technologies. I lead HR within the corporate services space. So my primary clients are our Chief Financial Officer and our Chief Marketing Officer. Tons of digital transformation happening within there. Prior to Dell, I was Chief People Officer of EOS Energy, and then prior to that, I was with HP for just under 14 years, and lots of experience in and around digital transformation and obviously people analytics as well.
Matt Gosney, I'm Vice President of Organizational Development and Learning Services for UCHealth. UCHealth is an academic healthcare system based right here in Colorado, about 35,000 employees, all up and down the Front Range and throughout Colorado. I oversee organizational development and learning, which is our performance management, succession planning, leadership and staff development, rewards and recognition, HR analytics, which has me on this stage today, as well as anything else that my CHRO decides to throw at me.
Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer Herod. I'm with Johnson Controls. I'm the Senior Director of Global Learning and Development. I've been there for 8 years. Johnson Controls is a technology solutions company in the commercial space. So we do a lot of things with connected HVAC, fire, and security. We want to make sure that where you live, work, and play is safe, comfortable, and sustainable. My current area of responsibility is enterprise learning programs, global leadership development, and employee engagement, so our employee listening strategies.
Hey everyone, I'm Neil Taylor, and I'm Vice President of Product Marketing and Experience for Visier. And Visier is the global leader in people analytics. And basically what we do is we help you make sense of your data, all your people data. So we have supercharged people analytics for tens of thousands of companies, from as large as Ford Motor Company, who I know is here, all the way down to smaller companies like Eventbrite. So one of the things I'm most excited about is how we're starting to bring in AI into people analytics, in generative AI, which is making it way, way more accessible for everyone to understand their people.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Erin Gabrish, and I'm from Bundle. For those of you that don't know what Bundle is, we offer one-on-one personalized synchronous training programs. And my role at Bundle is very exciting. I get to lead the learning and development team, where we create these learning experiences. We partner with companies who have tough nuts to crack in terms of skills gaps, learning challenges, and really try to come up with methods and experiences to improve those over time. Part of my role also is to lead kind of the program evaluation and analysis of how well we're doing, which very much relates to this topic at hand. So I'm very excited to meet everyone and share a little bit to this conversation.
All right, so we're going to start out here. Thank you, everybody, for introducing yourself. Getting like kind of a current definition of people analytics. And what does it mean? Does it go beyond just matching skills of your employees to the needs of your company, and versus what people say that your employees say they have versus what they actually have, and how do you put that to work in your company? So we'll start with Matt and just go down the line and end with Peter through our rotation here.
Yeah, so people analytics is a very popular term right now, which is why we've got a session on it right here. And it is, we discussed this in the hall, it's not a new concept, right? We've been studying people and counting people and tracking what they do for centuries. What is really emerging and what is changing is the technology that we can lay over people analytics that allows us to not just describe where they're at today, but what's possible tomorrow, or what might be happening tomorrow that we need to watch out or look out for. And so I think as we talk about people analytics today, that's what's exciting about it is the opportunity to predict, the opportunity to cast our eyes a little bit more forward and see into the future of what might happen, and then prepare our organizations for those contingencies.
What I would add to that is that, the understanding of people analytics as a data set for managers that are out in the workforce that aren't in HR, looking at their people like they look at their performance data or their customer satisfaction data. It's just another piece of the story that goes into how a company is performing and how you can use that data to your advantage.
Yeah, I mean, preaching to the choir a little bit here, but we all know that people are the most valuable resource within any organization. I mean, they make up the vast majority of OpEx, anywhere from 60 to 70%. They're responsible for driving innovation. All of your managers are the ones who are responsible for managing people. Like, that data set, in my mind, is the most important data set in the entire company. It's on par with customer data and financial data. And it can be unlocked. It can be leveraged to make better decisions on behalf of the person and on behalf of the business. So one of the things we see really mature companies starting to do is blend their people data with their what we call business data or work data. So, let's look at the tenure of people, or who they are, or where they came from, or who their manager is, and then let's look at what's their sales quota attainment. How many widgets have they produced? You can start to combine those two things together, and that is really the future of people analytics. It's looking at not just the person, but the work they do, and how do you help them to be the best that they can be?
Okay, Erin?
Sure, hi. So kind of what we do as it relates to this is we're trying to see what that data tells us. What is the story, and what are kind of the actions that we can take as a result of it? So back to what Matt had said, focusing on the people for it, that's very much an area that we hone in on. We love how the technology can tell us a story, but we really want to see how we can bring that human element into being able to make improvements in some of those areas by bringing those human-centered skills, so that we're able to bring, better thinkers, problem solvers, other ways to address certain issues and build up more organizational confidence and productivity and teamwork and all of those great things, as well. So it's more than just the numbers as well, but just using that to make some sort of action.
So how do you leverage all of this data when it comes to like corporate culture and keeping people in their jobs and then helping them move up into places and roles that are suitable for their skills and what they bring to the table? And we'll start with Jennifer on this one.
Okay. Well, my area of analytics really focuses on the employee engagement, so employee listening and understanding, do people like working at Johnson Controls? Would they recommend it? Do they have the resources they need to do their job? Do they feel like there's opportunities for growth? And with that is educating managers to understand, how to leverage that data, right? And so look at their teams and what are their teams telling them, through the survey that they're not telling them face to face, and how can they then leverage that data to get them the right skills that they need. And they could look at their workforce and plan for, what they need to accomplish their commitments to the organization, and figure out, do we need skill building? Do we need skill building for, which particular, group is performing and which isn't? And so what can we do with that? So it's finding the detail in the data and kind of the story behind it, which is how it can help connect to skill building, really.
Yeah, one of the things I'll just add too, and one of the, I think, tricky parts of this, and Neil and I were talking about this earlier, is it feels like the sand is sort of shifting below our feet on skill sets. The skills that we're very much focused on and relevant to getting the work done, 5, 6, 7 years ago, today look a lot different, and especially as we think about technology coming in and just augmenting how the work is getting done, the skills that are really relevant for the future seem to be kind of in play. And traditionally on the people analytics front, one of the ways that we've assessed skill sets is we just go out to somebody and say, well, tell us what you know and check this box in Workday, go down to this drop-down menu and then check off a bunch of things, and you see this on LinkedIn and other things. But that doesn't necessarily tell you the depth of their knowledge. So that's more of a disclosed skill set. And so what I think is more interesting, and as we use technology, it's really about inferring the depth of knowledge that people have in a different space. You can go out and get a certificate in Python programming, but that doesn't mean you're going to be the one that's auditing everybody else's code, inside your organization. And so, again, Neil and I were talking about this. I think this is really the interesting space where technology is going to come in and try to really help us infer the depth of knowledge for people. That's changing quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd add to that. I think a lot of the challenge that we see with skills is organizations that are just trying to boil the ocean and figure it all out at once. And the other challenge, I think, Peter, as you said, if you're just inputting skills into a database somewhere, number one, employees probably aren't going to remember to do that. They don't wake up every day thinking, oh, I wonder what skill I should add to my profile today. They just don't do that. And even if they do, it becomes outdated almost the moment it's input. And so, I think the important thing as well is not to have skills kind of siloed off, but think about it in terms of the rest of your people data, because skills is really just one input, and there's so much other data that's really important beyond the skills they have, but also the jobs, their experience, their tenure, all these other things really make up the whole person. And so the more you can get beyond just thinking about it from a skill standpoint, the better.
Erin, do you have anything else to add?
I would just, just sort of, not to be redundant here, but this, what you were saying in terms of how technology can be really helpful, and, so on and so forth. I would just like to add too that we also find as employees are developing these additional skills, it's also important to focus on skills related to adaptability and agility as it relates to all of this change that will be forthcoming too. So as you're looking at the data, it's telling a certain story. When you start to action on it, how is your organization ready to move as a result of it? Are your employees, how are they feeling as a result of it? How are the managers ready to develop some resilience within their teams, within themselves, and within the organization to be able to really make some change in some way?
Erin, that's really interesting. That in healthcare, we feel pretty confident in our ability to assess and track technical skill, which you all should be grateful for, because you want to know that your nurse knows what they're doing when they're doing it, right? But the challenge is, and I think it was inferred in your comments, is soft skills and capturing soft skill. But if any of you have looked at all at human-centered leadership, which I think is the emerging model for leadership in the future, it is really focused on change management and psychological safety and key components of leadership that are going to be critical in a very dynamic work environment, healthcare or outside of healthcare. I felt like, particularly going through the COVID experience, I don't know if y'all remember COVID, but it was a thing in healthcare. We felt very prepared from a technical skills standpoint for the changes that we needed to make. Right, we moved to virtual care as a major component of our strategy. Some other things that we needed nurses and individuals ready to be able to do. We knew who could do it, and we could move them there. The challenge was in really understanding, capturing, and quantitatively measuring soft skill. And I think it's going to become even more important in the future. I don't know if we've got a great answer for that yet, but I know that is the next mountain to climb.
Can I just add one more thing to that?
Of course.
I'm so glad you mentioned psychological safety. I know it's a squishy thing, it's very important. We're here talking about people analytics, but we have found when we're working with organizations, when we embed psychological training, or psychological safety training and start to measure that, we see the rest of the outcomes and skill measurements start to improve. Organizations create this safe space. People are more willing to say things, that they might not have felt comfortable saying, or doing things that they may not have felt comfortable doing at some time, ago. And that's really where we start to see change occur, and the rest of the metrics start to improve as a result of it.
Yeah, I'm curious about when you talk about psychological safety, but you're also talking about data, which is to me, very organized and structured, and always I guess predicts outcomes, whereas psychological safety is constantly moving. So how do you employ something like AI and trying to figure that out in your company and predict and figure out what your workers need?
This is an engagement question.
I veered off script too, I apologize, but this is interesting to me, and I thought it would be to our audience.
I was like, oh yeah, an easy question.
It's going to you next.
Okay, so a quick little add-on story that can kind of wrap all these together. So Johnson Controls is 100,000 people in all companies around the world. We just announced this summer that we're selling off about a third of our company to focus on commercial spaces. So we're selling off kind of our residential commercial market. But that's a third of our company. So we have people that are really going, oh my gosh, what are we going to do now? And then our CEO announced his retirement. Oh,
good timing.
Right? We measure our engagement quarterly so that we can put it in the hands of the managers so they have got real-time data. Our strategy scores, tanked. Our change and transformation scores tanked. We measure 24 different drivers. A lot of these are leadership behaviors. So we noticed that, okay, strategy's low. Our strategy didn't really change. We're just tightening it up, and we're focusing on a particular market. So we started, really engaging different groups, and we saw our strategy score rise because we were reaching further in the organization, not just kind of our executive level. And we brought in some more VPs, and we brought in some more director level and manager level because we noticed that those scores were really low because they're protecting their employees from all the noise. So once we started a targeted intervention on our strategy and how to communicate that to your teams, so some skill building here, but we focused on trust, psychological safety. Now, we're hoping to see that those scores, they rose in a quarter, significantly, meaningfully rose. We still have work to do for sure, because we're still below the benchmark on the director level, but listen, I think it's having those conversations, and it's all about communication and building trust and making sure that your teams know that you're there for them. And how we use AI, we've been trying to implement an AI conversation coach for the last 6 months, and it has gone through, we're in deep data privacy review around, can we trust that the AI is going to coach our teams correctly to have the right conversation? Do we trust the AI? We use AI. So that's a great use case that we want to start using more. We use AI for employee engagement when we look at our comments and want to make some meaningful themes. and, recommended leadership actions. We don't do anything. We have our own internal, My AI JCI, so that it's behind our firewall. But we have implemented Copilot too across the organization. So it's about building skills. So we use it in all of our programs, but it's also about building skills for people to be able to use the new tools that are available to them too. So kind of a long-winded answer that kind of winds a few things together. But we were chatting about that use of AI and in the hall too. So how else can you?
Yeah, I mean, I know Matt wants to go too.
Well, no, I'm glad you mentioned it, and since we're off topic, might as well just keep going. And I want you to know I would love a whiteboard right now because I'm an old trainer, and so that's how I think best is when I write on the whiteboard. But what you're describing is really important. It's important for you all to understand this as well, is when you're talking about people analytics, you need to start with desired business outcomes, right? Start with understanding the goals and objectives of the organization or the challenges that the organization is facing. The change that Johnson Controls is going through is a perfect example. But once you understand that, then you translate that into key employee experience components. Is it psychological safety? Is it flexibility? Is it skills development? Is it retention? Or is it engagement? Whatever it is, you translate those business outcomes, the desired business outcomes, into employee experience components. And that then informs the questions that you go ask in an engagement survey or the data points that you're looking for along the way, if it's in life cycle surveys or if it's retention data or exit survey data or whatever you're getting at. But you want to start with what's the business outcomes that we're trying to drive, and then what are the people components, people experience components that we can influence based on that, and then where does our data come? And then finally, those questions should tie to behavior, to some sort of leader or employee behavior. Because that's really where change happens, is in employee behavior. So when we talked about psychological safety, yes, we can influence psychological safety through the questions that we ask through an engagement survey, because it should lead to change or a delta in behavior, or at least a current state, and then we can intervene through training and development to change behavior, to create a more psychologically safe environment, to understand where we don't have it so that we can go in and intervene.
Yeah, I want to add a couple things on psychological safety, and I think the second thing that's coming up is this idea of adaptability. Mm-hmm. Psychological safety, so if people analytics is done well, it should be essentially holding up a mirror to the organization. The data should reflect what's going on within the workforce and what's going on within the organization. And that should create more psychological safety, because the entire person is understood, the entire workforce is understood, their impact on the business is understood, as well as the business impact on the person. So I think that's really, really important, but it has to be data-driven, because otherwise, if it's just gut feel or a manager making a decision based on emotion, there's no psychological safety in that. On the topic of adaptability, I mean, Jen, you brought up AI, and Peter, you brought up skills and how rapidly they're changing. I mean, I think we're all feeling this need individually and as businesses to adapt to a very, very dynamically changing market. And AI is compounding that. So we're seeing this rate of change that's faster than has ever happened before. And I think one of the things that's going to happen is organizations need to be much more agile and much more adaptable than they have in the past. And this whole idea of like workforce planning, doing it once a year, or trying to understand what skills we need for, fiscal 25, this is an ongoing thing that needs to happen every day, and it isn't just HR's job, it's the manager's job to make sure that you have the right workforce, because if you're just doing it once a year, that's way too slow. And so again, having the right data around the skills that you need, the skills that you have, the skills you need to develop internally, all that becomes really, really important. And you have to kind of continuously shapeshift your workforce in today's day and age.
Matt, I'll just build off it. I know we're probably 10 minutes over topic over on this question, but I'll just make this last point is the point you're making, which is these professional skills are becoming more and more relevant. And as we're especially bringing technology and augmenting the work, this shift not so much away from technical skill development, but this emphasis now on these more enduring human qualities that all of us possess. These are the things that I think are going to start to differentiate workers in the future. It's really that resiliency, it's that decision making, it's that ability to exhibit emotional intelligence. And that to me is actually a really positive story for employees to hear, because if you think about this, it is a scary topic. It is this augmentation of work. It is technology coming in and really changing 15 to 20 to 25% of how the work gets done. So what then? Well, it's these skills that really continue to push us into the more human end of the spectrum as we blend digital and human labor together. So for employees that are thinking, my job's going away, well, maybe it's a little bit of a different tilt to it. Maybe it's 15 to 20 to 25% of your job is now being freed up to really push into this human space that, frankly, technology isn't there to come and supplant just yet. I'm not saying 10 years from now we might not have technology and decision-making exhibited by AI that will continue to change this. But right now, it's this push towards that human end of the spectrum, and that changes the whole conversation back to professional skills development taking much more of a center seat. And it was so much 5, 6, 7 years ago, really technical digital fluency skill development. Still very important, but it's really coming back into the fold, I think.
And it's the hardest thing to develop.
It's the hardest thing to develop,
Right.
exactly.
So L&D folks, your jobs are safe, right?
Thanks for going off the path with me. That's a reporter, what we like to do there. When we find something interesting, go that way. So we've got the people analytics. You're predicting the needs of your company. How do you change your hiring approach, job listings, and what you're looking for when you start recruiting based on what your people analytics say you need? I think it's Neil's turn to go first.
Yeah, so I think the predictive nature of people analytics is becoming much more commonplace. And people analytics can actually help you predict who might resign, or at least give you an idea of who might resign. And along with that, which skills are walking out the door. And so, kind of back to this idea of continuous planning, you need to understand the gap that you have, and you can't always just hire your way out of a skills deficiency. You can't hire your way out of a DEI gap, none of that. It has to be a combination of hiring, retention, and internal development. All three of those need to work in concert. And so, I know I sound like a broken record on this, but if you just have siloed data, or you have centers of excellence internally that are just looking at their data only, you'll never meet the goals that you need to meet around workforce planning or DEI or skills or whatever it might be. Those three need to work in concert. You need to understand, the learning development plans that you have in place to develop those skills internally, how you're hiring, how you're retaining skills that might be in demand. And the only way you can do that is through really connected data that is pushed out to the edges of the organization. And again, not just within HR, but managers that are making these everyday hiring decisions, or managers who are signing their people up for different coursework. All of that needs to happen, and it can't just happen within HR.
Erin?
I would just add to that just a couple of things. We've been finding that when organizations are looking to hire, it's more than just those specific job-related skills. And I know you had mentioned not just for that, because that ultimately, might bite you in the other end, one day. We're finding organizations that are looking more broadly for more transferable skills that could be applied to other areas so that the employee can grow. It allows for better, you can invest more in the employee because they have more capability within the organization to do more things. And I know that shift from looking at skill-based hiring is certainly very difficult, but we have found through some of our partnerships and advisements with different L&D teams that starting to look at what those critical skills that people need in your organization and defining those have really helped to guide them in terms of what they need. I would also add to this, just like as a good complement, we do advise L&D teams to find ways to become more agile in their approaches. So rather than just saying, nope, this is it, these are the skills, these are the things we need to do, these are the metrics, constantly looking to change and improve and adopting that continuous learning mindset, even when it comes to hiring, when it comes to whatever it might be, to always try to change. And by adopting that approach, it allows for greater elasticity within the organization as the organization grows and moves, as well. I'm sure you, Jen, probably many of you have some things to contribute to this as well that you see.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just build off of your point around just this, concept around fungible talent and transferable skill sets, and that's, I think, just what we're seeing within Dell. And Dell, just to give you a scale sense here, about 120 to 125,000 employees globally. We are really restructuring our workforce to really pool resources together with those common skills, not necessarily always organizationally, but at least being able to identify where those pockets of skill sets actually exist, and then really deploying those resources over to projects that are really initiative focused. So we are to a degree breaking the boundaries of sort of traditional hierarchy of, this person is really aligned to this organization or does this work, or they sit in this job within the job architecture so they only do these things. But we're really going back to trying to assess the depth of everybody's skill set. We're really just being, I think, much more flexible as sort of pooled resources and really being able to apply them, in various parts of the company. And that's kind of breaking, I think, that traditional mold of how we've thought around job architecture and organizational hierarchy and things like that. So we're playing with, I think, organizational models in new ways, which is now making it a little bit easier to move resources around than it would have been in the past.
Matt?
That's fascinating. One of the things that we can do as well as in HR, look at how we do our work differently. About 6 or 7 years ago, my boss came to me and said, I want you to hire a director of diversity, equity, inclusion. This was prior to us having a CDO. And so I went out and did some interviewing and asked, well, what are you going to do when you come in and to this organization? And they all said the same thing. I'm going to train on implicit bias. And I thought, well, is that really going to solve our problem? Because our problem is, our data tells us that all of the leaders look like me, and that's an issue. And so I said, in teaching implicit bias isn't going to solve that. So instead what we did is we created a manager of talent optimization and equity. And their role runs from a tactical standpoint, our succession planning and performance management processes. However, they do so with a lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we're running our succession planning and performance management processes as we always would within HR. However, they also have dual responsibility to throw light to the organization on where inequities are occurring within those processes, where we've got lack of balance or lack of consistency in terms of our pipeline, our talent pipelines, and then to go enact change there, to implement programming that will enact change. Well, that is people analytics, and that's changing our HR structures to support solving problems instead of supporting traditional processes. And it paid off, right? We've improved our BIPOC internal promotion rate by 40% in 2 years, and that is because we changed the way that we were looking at problems and the way that we were structured to solve them.
Jennifer, do you have any to add on this one?
Peter talked a little bit about agile teams, and I would assume that Dell as a technology company would be on the, really a forefront of creating those agile teams. Some days. I know some of our functions do better than others at that. We're just embarking on sort of a skills-based workforce and how we're restructuring that and what we could do with that. And we really are loving the idea of creating an opportunity for people to go get skill development on a stretch assignment. And so that's how we can retain and develop employees with, and keeping that, skill set within our own company. So similar to, moving teams around, it's how can we build those opportunities and get them into the hands of the people that need to build that.
One of the things I've seen work really well, and this goes back to my days at HP, is we created what we called affinity groups that were around a topic. It wasn't bound to an organization, or it wasn't bound to any geography. It was globally, it was for anybody that had an interest in a specific topic could join this new community. And within that, there was white papers, there was conferences, there was things and opportunities for people to learn. But it broke down all the walls organizationally.
That's awesome.
And we typically stood those up in and around technical topics and expertise, which was, as a technology company, you would expect, but it can be really stood up around a whole variety of topics, and sort of just thinking outside of the box on just kind of creating that group and community to develop is a really cool thing to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so Peter's answer there kind of flows into our next question here, which is talking about figuring out like what your company needs, and then like, oh wait, we need more people with this skill set. We can't just like go out and hire all of those, and you want to keep the people that you've already got. So how do you create that continuous learning culture and set people up to like be able to pivot to changes in their jobs and what's going on in the world? Would you like to start, Erin?
Yeah, I love this question, and I think it's just so critical. Developing that continuous learning culture is paramount for, I think everything. I was going to list them off, but I feel like it's really, really everything. And I think the best way to do that is really to start to embody those practices yourself. Easier said than done, right? We encourage leaders to role model those practices. And demonstrate them, show that you are learning things as well, and sharing what worked well and what didn't work well. Kind of goes back to psychological safety and some of these other components too. But when other leaders are embracing these learning opportunities, promoting them, bringing them up, sharing what they've learned, saying, encouraging their teams to take hold of their own learning, we see greater success and outcome achievement overall, and that is so important. We actually have a company that we work with that was really wanting to approach this, and they started small with a smaller pilot with us, a few hundred employees, but smaller for them, with a pilot, and wanting to start to embed this continuous learning culture through this pilot of employees. They were identified as high potential employees, and as they went through this, they not only saw increased communication, we saw increased interpersonal skills that we were able to measure. We were also we had an unintended consequence of improved customer satisfaction as a result of this, small pilot of employees going through the program. And they kept sharing their learnings with their teams, with their colleagues, and it really started to turn the tide in improvement overall. And it's just so excited for them still.
All right, we'll go Neil. We'll just go down the line.
Yeah, I think the next stage of continuous learning is then internal mobility. So, the hope is that they're learning something, and then they're probably not going to learn something just for the sake of learning it. They actually want to progress their careers. And people analytics is a great way to both measure the efficacy of learning and development programs to see, did this person actually acquire this skill after taking this course? But you can also look at, where did they go next? And that can be not just by coursework, but by different jobs. And so one of the things people analytics can unlock for organizations is a real view into internal mobility. So people with this title, where do they frequently go next? And how successful are they in that next role? You can tie together all of these data points to start to create real career roadmaps for people that make sense. And it's data driven. It's based on their performance, it's based on what they've learned, it's based on previous roles that they've had, but it actually gives them multiple paths that they can take.
And it's showing the value of people analytics and that mobility strategy to the organization, to the people that need to know it. And so linking it, connecting all the dots and linking it all together and making sure that you have good sponsorship at the top.
Yeah. One of the things we did about 4 years ago is we blew up our performance management process, and we now call it career conversations. Mm-hmm. Historically, performance management is a 90% look back and then maybe a 10% look ahead, and we flipped that. It's now a 90% look ahead, and a 10% calibration on where you are at today. But the purpose for that is to really create and to reinforce the value proposition of UCHealth that this is a place to come and grow, to grow your career, to grow your skill set. And it puts the leader and the employee in a different type of relationship where our job is to grow you and to help you achieve what you want to achieve. One of the questions that we ask now in our performance management, in our career conversations process is, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay in your current role? Do you want to explore other roles within the organization? Or do you want to move up into a leadership position? Well, what that allows us to do is then is to take those individuals that have said, I want to grow out or I want to grow up, and that we know are high performers, and we can target our developmental activities to those individuals because they're the ones that are going to pick up the phone when a recruiter calls. Mm-hmm. So that is a practical approach to people analytics.
It looks like we have like 7 seconds for Peter to...
I would say everything Matt just said.
Right.
No, I will just tell you one last thing. We did exactly that as well, and we really got the conversation changed from really this vertical climb of your career to more of a climbing wall, and sort of this. But it was all about really just increasing the frequency of conversation. So I think that's exactly what we've done as well. So.
Yep.
All right, great. I think we get a bonus for finishing on time. But thank you so much to our panelists. I hope this was informative for everybody and you learned a little something today.
Thank you.